Hello everyone. Welcome to Worchester Street. I hope you enjoy your stay. This story is the part 2 to the story The Abandoned Mining Town, a video I uploaded a few months back. If you haven't seen that video, click the link in the description to watch part 1 first. With that being said, let's get started. I drove down to the sheriff's office later that morning. To say I was shaken would be an understatement. I didn't understand how a person could just disappear from a house like Jen had. Even if she'd been taken by some maniac, I knew that I'd looked all around the house. There was no other car around for miles. I was sure of it. The sheriff's office wasn't an office after all. It was more like a cabin where he lived. I ran up to the door and banged on it furiously. "Come on, we have to go," I shouted. "We have to help Jen." The sheriff opened the door and stood framed in the doorway, just staring at me, furious. "We wouldn't have to if you just done what I told you in the first place." He sighed and seemed to age a decade. "Come inside," he said, his voice emotionless. "If we're gonna do what I think we'll have to do, you're gonna want some more information." I wanted to start searching right away, but something about his tone made me follow him into his cabin. He sat me on a couch opposite an armchair and settled down across from me. "I've been a ranger in charge of this area for almost 40 years, he said. "It's been almost a decade since the last person went missing here. That's for one reason." He held up a finger. "People stay away." He picked up a picture from the mantel and handed it to me. It was of the mine entrance that we'd passed by earlier, but it had clearly been taken from when the mine was still in use. Dozens of town members crowded out in front of the entrance. "This was the day we opened the new branch of the Montgomery coal mine. There I am." He pointed to a young figure in a sheriff's uniform. He stared at the picture for a long moment, then set it down and sighed. A few weeks after this picture was taken, the miners broke into a new cave. The town lit up with excitement from that info, until somebody said that it looked like somebody else had already been there. "How's that?" I said. "What did they find?" "Drawings," he said. "Of?" "We didn't really know what. One of the miners brought down a camera and took a picture. It looked like somebody who was turning into a bear, just caught halfway. We didn't know what to make of it." I took that in silence. Finally, I forced myself to ask the question burning in my mind. "Yeah, that's great, but what does that have to do with my friend?" "After they broke into that chamber, things changed in the town. People started hearing strange things on the wind. Animals started going crazy. And eventually, well, people started going missing. Students would be talking at school with their friend, and they'd never come out of the bathroom. Husbands would watch their wives walk into the kitchen and never see them again." He sighed. "And who'd be asked to investigate? Me. Each time we'd find a hole in the ground, just big enough for something to slip through. He walked to a closet and began rummaging through it. Those people who'd gone missing, we'd find them. Sometimes days later, sometimes weeks, but their remains would always be found inside the mines." I felt my mouth go dry. Jen was down there in the mines? What's doing this? Is there a bear or something that lives down there? The sheriff rolled his eyes and shook his head. "Is kidnapping the sort of thing that a bear does to you? I don't pretend to be an expert. What I've told you is what I know." He pulled out 2 headlamps from the closet, then a rifle. "It's been almost 10 years since I've gone into those mines, but I'd bet my life that's where your friend is right now." He tossed me one of the headlamps. "I've never found a missing person alive. Maybe that'll change today." I snatched it out of the air, still in shock. My mind raced, thinking of what he'd said. What if this ranger was just crazy and wanted to kill me down there? Still, we had heard strange things that night. I had to risk it for Jen. The 2 of us drove towards the entrance of the mine and parked, and began our way down into the darkness. The start of the mine was well-traveled, crisscrossed with minecart tracks leading down in different directions. The sheriff seemed to know where he was going, so I followed close behind. He cradled his rifle in his hands like a small child. He was twitchy, jumping at every small noise. At the same time, he was excited, almost like a child. As we made our way down the uneven terrain, he would periodically check his rifle, then talk to himself. "We'll get it today. Yes, we will." The mine tracks curved off to the left, and the sheriff shook his head. "Not down there. This way." He pointed with a gun down a narrow passage that twisted and turned in the rock. He led the way down, and soon I'd gained a dozen scrapes on my knees and back from the sharp exposed rock. I held my phone out and took a few pictures as we made our way down. They're what you've been seeing up to this point. "Here," he said, pointing to a section of passageway that was half blocked by a rock. A small gap was visible, revealing a further passage beyond the obstruction. We gripped the rock, pulled, and it rolled away. The inside of the cavern smelled horrendous. It reeked of sulfur, but strangely, a soft note of cinnamon also permeated the air. I flashed my light into the cavern and saw nothing but more rock. On one wall, I saw an image that I didn't understand. It looked like a cave drawing, but it was so faded that it was hard to tell of what. Then I saw motion out of the corner of my eye. Jen lay on her back, on a bed of broken rocks. Long, thin cuts crisscrossed her legs and arms, and her eyes were closed. I ran up to her, and a relief washed over me as I heard her breathing. "You still with us, Jen?" I asked. She opened an eye. "What? Where are we? What's going on? What is—" She inhaled sharply when her hand brushed a cut along her leg. "I'm pretty jacked up, aren't I?" "Don't move, I gotcha," I said. "It's probably gonna sting though." I gingerly wrapped her arms around my neck, then stood up, carrying her weight on my back. "We finally found one alive," the sheriff said, almost to himself. "Incredible." My headlamp wasn't giving me enough light, so I pulled out my phone to use as an additional light source. The three of us began walking back out through the mine. Progress through the smaller passageway was excruciatingly slow with Jen on my back, but I managed. When we reached the main passageway, I breathed a sigh of relief. "I think we're gonna make it out of." The smell of cinnamon flooded my nostrils. I turned deeper down the mine and saw 2 points of light watching us. My headlamp either didn't reach or didn't illuminate whatever this thing was. I took a picture though. This is what I saw. "You two, leave now," the sheriff whispered. "This one is mine." I turned to the sheriff. "But now," he barked. Then he turned back towards the 2 glowing lights and started running towards them. I turned and half ran, half walked towards the entrance. I had already turned a corner when the first rifle shot rang out. I picked up my pace and soon made it out of the mine. I loaded Jen into my car and drove us out of there with as much speed as I could manage without flying off the road. When I'd taken Jen to the hospital, I called emergency services and told them to check out the mine. They never got back to me, and I only found out what happened several days later when I saw the headline on a local news site: "Local sheriff gone missing." I hope you all enjoyed this story. If you did, you'd probably enjoy my ebook, Tales from Worchester Street, available now on Amazon Kindle. Alternatively, if you'd like to receive a PDF of this ebook, you can support me on Patreon. All of my Patreon backers receive a free copy of Tales from Worchester Street, containing 11 of my stories. I'd like to give a special shout out to all of my Patreon backers: Anna McCrackers, Lilith Scyther, Maureen Garcia, Melissa Priolo, Private Castle, and Ricky Griffin. Thank you for your support. If you enjoyed this video, you can click the link on the screen to be taken to a playlist of my favorite stories. Thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed your time on Worcester Street.